把这两件事情。
Hello, I'm Kathryn Brown, and I serve as the head of the keyboard division at the Cleveland Institute of Music. I'm grateful to Professor Tang for his invitation to participate in this very special Global Pedagogy Conference. The name of my presentation today is Magical Use of Touch Through Different Style Periods. We were all born with two hands. As pianists, our hands are our magic treasures, as they are the tools that create sound and expression. As pianists, we continually explore different ways to touch the keyboard, different ways to use our fingers, our hands, arms, shoulders, our backs, really our whole body in playing the piano. Today, I would like to discuss how the different style periods from early music to contemporary music make different demands on our body. The sound we produce in playing works by Johann Sebastian Bach will be very different from our sound production when performing works by the French Impressionist composer Debussy, for example. And the use of our body when performing Mozart will be very different than if we are performing a Brahms sonata or a Rachmaninoff concerto. Touch evolved throughout history as keyboard instruments developed and performers were playing in larger spaces. Much of this evolution started from the early keyboard instruments that were used in small spaces and over time developed into larger instruments that were capable of producing a bigger sound on stage in a large concert hall. I will walk us through chronologically from the early style period of the Baroque, then the Classical period, followed by the Romantic period, the Impressionistic period, and more recent 20th century works. This discussion about body awareness should help us in our practicing, in our identifying the right touch for various composers. Let us begin with the Baroque period. Much of the music of the Baroque period was performed by court musicians who played in smaller rooms within castles. The instruments were more delicate in nature and were used in more intimate settings. The keyboards used as early as 1397 were harpsichords. The sound was made by a mechanism that plucks the strings, which results in a completely different touch sensation than playing a modern-day piano, in which the hammer strikes the string. There also was no means by which to make a crescendo or diminuendo. Each note was touched in the same way with a firm, reliable articulation of the finger. There was not a lot of weight required to produce the sound on these delicate instruments. As we play excerpts from the Baroque music I will share, we will notice mainly the use of the active finger action, which produces a clearly articulated tone. First is the Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier Book 2 in D minor, the prelude. We notice the independent finger action. From Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier Book 1 in C major, though this prelude is completely different in character, we still use a pure crystalline touch. Another Baroque composer, Domenico Scarlatti, also wrote many Baroque keyboard sonatas, which also demonstrate the vital use of clear finger articulation. His C major sonata requires a non-legato active use of the finger. The F minor sonata is slower and expressive, but again, requires a clear tone. Other successful Baroque composers include Bach's sons J.C. Bach and C.P.E. Bach, George Frederick Handel, Rameau, and Soler. So as we have observed in Baroque playing, sound production is focused on the finger action. As we move on to the classical period, we see the evolution of keyboard instruments. Keyboard composers at that time played the clavichord and also the forte piano, which is much more similar to the modern day piano. As we play the music of Mozart and Haydn, we start expanding our mechanism of touch by incorporating not only attention to the finger, but the expanding area of attention to the weight of the hands and the movement of the wrists. In the music of the classical period, we see many slurred figures, including appoggiaturas and cadences that require hand and wrist motion. We drop with weight in the hand and then take the weight away by lifting the wrist. This gives the sense of tension and resolution. In the early classical period, most phrase endings were round, giving its sense of elegance and refinement. The musical texture was also very light and transparent, and the action of the forte piano was also much lighter than today's modern day piano and took very little effort to produce the sound. You will see the use of the wrist in producing the slurs and elegant phrase endings in Mozart's sonatas, Herschel 332 in F major. The elegant second movement of this sonata also is a good example of free wrist. Mozart had a love for singers, and his music is very singing and cantabile. The style is more connected or legato than the music of Bach that we just explored. Another example from the classical period is Haydn's sonata in C major, Hoboken 16, number 50, which also incorporates a light touch and use of slurs. As we move along to the music of Beethoven, we continue to see new inventions that expanded the keyboard's ability to produce more sound. The sustaining pedal was added, and the action was much stiffer, which made it more challenging to play and required more weight. In Beethoven's works, we start incorporating more forearm weight to produce a deeper, richer sound. The opening of Beethoven 110, I'm releasing the weight of the forearm into the keyboard. We also use forearm weight in the opening of the Waldstein Sonata. Here we can also hear Beethoven's sudden change of characters and dynamic contrasts. You'll see the forearm in the very opening. Moving on to the Romantic period, including work by Brahms, performers started playing in larger spaces, and the keyboard music became more orchestral in nature, with a larger and thicker texture. We must imagine that we have the whole orchestra at our fingertips. To produce large chords, we need the support from the shoulder with energy, and support traveling through the arm, hand, and fingertip and through the key. An excerpt from Brahms' first sonata shows these big chords and the use of the shoulder mechanism. Feel that energy into the keyboard. And if one uses the larger muscles in the right way, a pianist can get a very full, satisfying sound without effort. Around 1900, the first Impressionist composers, including Debussy, Ravel, and Fauré, experimented with very different tonal colors, just like the famous painters of the time, such as Monet, Degas, and Renoir. As pianists, we can also think of the tonal colors like brushstrokes that a painter would use. Many of the effects were very light, soft, and transparent. The pianist must experiment with different touches to create these effects. I have found it useful to approach these passages with a flatter hand, extended fingers, applying very little weight. That's the Debussy prelude, The Girl with the Flaxen Hair. A similar is a passage from another Debussy prelude, Feu d'artifice. Especially for Debussy, this rather light and extended hand position seems to feel natural in producing these unique sounds. As we then move into the 20th century, the piano is often treated as a percussion instrument. In the works of Bartók or Prokofiev, for example, we hear how the hammer strikes the string with more intensity. Not only does the tone production require more shoulder support, but the support of the whole lower back as well. We need this additional support in order to produce a massive enough sound. We hear the percussive sounds in this excerpt from Prokofiev's second sonata. From Rachmaninoff's second concerto, when we need a very large sound, we can support with our lower back as well. You will also notice the use of high wrists, which also provide support for a bigger sound production. If we support from the larger muscles, it will avoid strain in the smaller muscles. To summarize, we've observed how our physical approach to the keyboard changes as we travel through time, from the early keyboard music of the Baroque period to music of the 20th century. The size of the instruments and the larger concert spaces affect our magic tools needed to produce sound. In the early keyboard music, the focus is on a smaller area, mostly the attention on the finger action. Then as we move forward in history, we start adding larger areas of the body to produce a bigger sound. As we observed in Bach, we started with the attention of the finger action, and then we added the weight of the hand and the use of the wrist in the music of Mozart and Haydn. We then added the weight of the forearm in the music of Beethoven. We added shoulder weight as we looked at the thicker texture of Brahms from the Romantic period. We incorporated the support of our upper and lower back as we needed to increase the sound in the percussive sounds in Prokofiev and massive sounds needed in a Rachmaninoff concerto. Hopefully, you will find this useful to consider as you perform pieces from these various style periods. The awareness of our body mechanism will help us as we refine our tone production and strive to make more interpretations stylistically authentic and imaginative. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you have gathered some ideas from this brief presentation. I extend my very best wishes to you in your own music making process. Thank you.